Yo, what's up? It's Jimmy on from Glitchy Thumb. Today we have character 2.5 Bug Boots. That's the name I came up with. I'm going to be just dropping it into Buildbox with our animation. That's about it. I think in this video, we'll just see what I decided to do. Again, these are old videos. I'm just narrating. Let's get to the video. I open up Buildbox, click 3D game. That's pretty much my usual go-to when I use Buildbox. If you haven't checked out the last video where we created this character in Blender, there's some good nuggets that I think you'll find helpful because I created a humanoid body for character 2.5. I used Mixamo for the first time and also a XP kit add-on that's pretty useful for Blender and Mixamo. So definitely check that out. So I drop in the FBX, click import. Here we have character 2.5 Bug Boots. He got his name because I gave him some boots with texture painting. I click into the character. We have 3 keyframe animations. We should only have 1. I had to test during the time to see which animation was which. This one was the incorrect one because of the stretching, so I deleted that. Connected the second one. This one is not the dying animation that we did in Blender and Mixamo. Delete that one and then connect this one. This one's the correct dying animation. A little bit weird shading going on his head when he lifts up. But overall, that's the animation that we got from Mixamo for the dying animation. Again, the reason why I had to double check to see which animation is which is because in Blender, when you export with all actions, it includes all the keyframe animations that are in your Blender file. In my Blender file, this is for character set number 2. There's 5 characters, so it's including various keyframe animations from other characters. I didn't rename each action, so that's the reason why I edit the scene, uncheck receive shadow for this character. You can see all our parts are still separate in Blender. We had it separate for the body, the head, the eyes, and the eyelids. You can keep your objects separate like this. You have more control over each object in Buildbox, but you have more things to uncheck. If there are some things that you don't want to be displayed, like the receive shadow, you have to uncheck for each separate object. That's the reason why I joined them all together into one object so that I only have one scene to edit per object. Otherwise, this part gets tedious when you have a bunch of separate objects. I checked looped so that we can see the animation play over and over so that we can see that it's correct. I'm zooming in on the character to get a closer look on how it looks. This animation is pretty cool for the dying animation. We did that pretty fast because of the help of Mixamo. They have all these complex animations as presets and it's provided by Adobe. Definitely check that out. It streamlines our workflow for our character design. It just makes my life so much easier. I don't know why the arms look like that. It looks like sausage arms, but it definitely didn't look like that in Blender. Most likely it had to do with how Mixamo rigged the character with the separate bones. That's gonna be part of the character now, with these sausage-like looking arms. That's why art is subjective, because anything can happen in the process. And it could just be a part of the formulation of the character. It makes them even more unique and a one-of-one character. I changed it to Shadeless to see how that looks. When you change it to Shadeless, you don't see all the polygons and the low poly design for your character. It's just textured. It's a little bit brighter, I believe, too. You don't get that shading issue under the head like you do with the default setting. It looks a little bit cartoony this way. Definitely looks more like a cartoon character. So that's why I like using Shadeless. Definitely works. Hides all your imperfections that you did in Blender for your low poly if you want to do something quickly for a prototype. I kept the design this way because this is going to be a comparison of character 2.5 the way it is right now. We're going to compare it to the outline version to see which one looks better. I normally just like putting the outline on there. It just stands out to me. It really looks like my sketch. So that's why I do it. It has that anime feel to it with the very thin outlines. In order to add the outline, I'm in Blender now. We need to go inside the armature, duplicate all the separate objects, the body, the head, the eyes, the eyelids. In order to set up the outline, we have to go through that process that we normally do, but for each item now. This is the reason why I joined them all together. It's just so much easier to have one object and then apply our outline process to it. It just makes everything so much faster. But that's entirely up to you. If you want separate objects, this is how you would do it. For the second body that we duplicated, we add a second material This is the outline with the emission and backface culling checked. And then we add a mask modifier and a solidify modifier, check flip normals, check high quality normals, change the material index offset from 0 to 1, go to vertex groups, add a new group and rename it to outline. Under vertex group, click your outline group, move your solidify modifier above the mask modifier, change the thickness to whatever you like. The outline is only going to be applied to the body right now because that's the object that we're selecting. Now we have to apply the outline to the duplicate object for the head. Quick way to do this is to select the duplicate of the body. This is the one with the outline, and then shift select the head and press Ctrl L, and you'll be able to link and transfer some of the data from the body that has the outline. Select copy modifiers, and this will bring over the mask and the solidify modifier. Actually, this looks incorrect. I probably did it backwards. This is what happens to me all the time. I had to actually do this so many times where I messed up in order to remember it, because that's just how I learn. I do things over and over until I actually remember the actual process. If you actually selected the body first and then shift selected the head, you're actually copying over the modifiers from the head to the body. We actually want it to be the opposite. So you're gonna have to press undo a few times so we can get back to our original setting. Select the head, which is the new object that you want to apply the outline to, and then shift select the body. This one is the one with the different modifiers and whatever we set up. That's actually the correct order. That's something to remember. I always forget this. I select the incorrect one all the time, but there's a specific order you have to do. And then you press Ctrl L and select copy modifier. This will bring over the solidify and mask modifier to your duplicate of your head. You can see the shell vertex group. The outline is in red. That's fine. All you need to do is add a new vertex group and just rename it to outline, and everything will be correct. We also have to do this for the left eye. Select the left eye, shift select the head that has the modifiers that we just applied, press Ctrl L and copy modifiers. When you click your left eye, you can see the modifiers have been transferred. We have to do the same thing for the eyelid. Select the eyelid, select the left eye, copy modifiers. We do the same thing for the right eye. Select the right eye, shift select the left eyelid, Ctrl L, copy modifier. Same thing for the right eyelid, select it, shift select the right eye, Ctrl L, copy modifier. Now, all our duplicate objects have all the necessary modifiers that we need. It's all been set up correctly already. All we need to do is go to the vertex groups and add a new group and rename it to outline. Now, the shell vertex group, the outline is not red anymore with no more errors. Also in the mask modifier, you would need to do this for all your separate objects. Also, you need to transfer the material as well, because we need the second material with the outline, but I didn't do it here. I was manually doing it by just clicking the plus sign and adding it in. You can also do it the same way like you did with the modifiers. You can press Ctrl L and then transfer your materials over. So that's how you would do that if you want to skip all the tedious work. You can definitely see it's a little bit redundant. I'm doing the same process over and over. In order to streamline what we just did to make it a little bit more efficient is to join the objects. That would make all the objects into one, and then we can duplicate that object, add the outline process that we normally do, and we wouldn't have to do this multiple times. I do this to show different alternatives. If you do want to keep separate objects, this is what you would have to do to make this process a little bit faster. That would be just to press Ctrl L and then transfer over your material and modifier for the outline process. That's what's beneficial with Character 2.5. Bug Boots, definitely learning new things within Blender, trying to make everything a bit more efficient. I'm pretty sure there's an easier way to transfer the outline group as well, but I didn't really look into that as much. So I had to manually include it for all the vertex groups of each separate object. Let me pause this. Where was I? Have to pick up that phone call. Yeah, you can see the outline and it's separate for each separate object now. So we have to manually adjust the outline for each separate object. That's going to be an issue for the character itself because all the outlines are going to be inconsistent with each other. If you're using this character within a game, it's going to look really weird. That's also the beneficial thing to joining all your objects so that your outline is consistent across the entire character. This is all for the purpose of the video so that you can see alternative ways to do things in Blender. If you want to do it the tedious way and have separate objects, that's entirely up to you. You have more control over each object if you need to. You don't have to worry about one joined object, but you can also create a backup with all your separate objects. So that's why I suggest to possibly join your objects into one, but also have a backup of your character as separate objects. That way you have different ways to use your character if you want to. We're going to export this in FBX so we can compare the two on how it looks in Buildbox. I just kept this the same name, but added an underscore and outline so that we can distinguish between the two. This is how I label everything. It's pretty straightforward on what everything is. But if you have trouble with naming conventions, just do it as simple as possible like I do it. You can refer to your videos to see what is which, and that makes your life so much easier. We go back to Buildbox, drag in our new FBX with the outline, click import. The left one is going to be the one without the outline. The right one is going to be the one with the outline. You can kind of see that in the gray. And we need to delete the first two keyframe animations because they're not the correct ones. Click edit scene. Now we have double the amounts of objects that we need to uncheck receive shadow for. The outline is going to be for the duplicate version of our separate objects. That's going to be the number 2. That's how you know which one to change from white to black. This is all going to be names that were in your Blender file. You have to distinguish between the two. That's why you should rename it to something like outline if that's the outline object for your character. Otherwise, it's going to be confusing in Buildbox. Make sure to label everything correctly. This is the tedious part because I normally don't use receive shadow on my characters. That's why I have to uncheck it. I'm just going through each one slowly to make sure we have the outline for all the body parts. Click play. You can see character 2.5, Bug Boots, has the outline now. We just need to adjust the view so that we can see both of our characters side by side so we can compare the two to see which one we like. This is how I compare between the designs, because I still have trouble deciding where I showcase my low poly because that's an aesthetic on its own, or I'm just going to simply do the shadeless version and just have the texture itself. That's pretty much what I'm comparing between the two. I change the material to shadeless for all the objects. Click play. You can see with the shadeless option, we don't have that shading issue under the head, so we can see more of our textures. It just looks better with the outline doing it with shadeless, at least I think, in comparison to the left side. It's entirely up to you what you think is best. To me, the left side looks a little bit bland in terms of the color. I just like the outline design. You could have a thin line art or a thick line art, depending on your preference. It really just depends on the style you like. Maybe I'll have variations of my art style for my future games just to see which one people like. So for me, I have to see it visually to make decisions. I can't just make decisions based off of a sketch. I just like to throw everything onto the screen as if it's a playground and decide, okay, now we have character 2.5. We have the texture applied and we have some dyeing animation applied to this character. What are some things I like and what are some things I don't like? What game mechanics come to my head when I think of this character? Those are just questions I would ask myself for the prototyping phase just to see what I would come up with for the purpose of this video. I use this for idea generation. It's just easier to watch the recording of what I did for this character, observe and analyze, and then decide what specific game I come up with. I didn't have a game in mind during the time that I was making this character. So the only thing I thought of was to compare the character without the outline and also with the outline. Now I'm actually thinking of different things, like the name of the character would be Bug Boots because of the texture that I applied, where he has pants and also some black boots. Possibly I might put him into some sort of cabin scene. Maybe the game will be taking place in a garden of some sort with some trees, some leaves. Every time I think about bugs, they're just very tiny, so things surrounding them would be very large. So possibly we would have giants walking around, or just regular people. They would be way bigger than the character, and maybe we have to dodge the incoming people walking around because we don't want to get stepped on. That's possibly a game idea that I think about now that I'm watching this video. That's just one game idea. There's possibly more that I might think of after watching this character a little bit more and trying to think about different things. I add the if collide and change the physics from none to dynamic. I do the same for both of the characters we dragged in. During this time, I was still familiarizing myself with Buildbox again. I repeat steps that I did in the previous videos over and over until I actually get it down in muscle memory. This was one where we need to edit the collision shape for our character. Now, if you have two characters, you need to add the if collide for both of them. Make sure the character is set to dynamic before anything, and then you can adjust both of the collision shapes, but you have to do it one by one. You'll be adjusting both the start and the if collide collision shapes, so that makes it more efficient that you're doing two collision shapes at once per character, of course. So those are the things that I've been trying to nail down to streamline my workflow process. I'm just trying to find things where we're doing it over and over, but trying to implement a step where we don't have to do it over and over and just have to do it once. It takes some time to think on how to do that. And sometimes we don't have an option to just do it once. So you really have to decide what you want to spend your time on. I would rather spend it on much more complex problems. Otherwise, you're going to be spending a lot of time just doing all the redundant work over and over. That doesn't really solve anything in building your full game. You're supposed to make progress, not be doing the same thing over and over. Once we're done with this collision shape, I kept it as a long rectangle. I saved the bbdoc. I click the previous character's file name. That makes it easy, where I don't have to retype the character and the number. I just have to click it and then increment the value, which is 5, and then press save. That's pretty much how I think about my workflow, because there's various little things that you need to do to label everything correctly so that you're not confused on what things are. Each program has its own workflow that you need to learn. These are some of the things that I found to make my workflow much more efficient. Hopefully that's useful to you guys. I press play to see character 2.5 bug boots with the dying animation. I go into debug mode to see what happens with the collision shape. The collision stays in place, but the animation falls down. We know this character is going to be falling into the ground, similar to this. We definitely need to lift it off the ground at some point, or have the character just die in a game and maybe fall through the floor, so that we don't have that issue where his head's just going into the ground, which doesn't make sense. That's entirely up to you on what you want to do with your character. That's pretty much what I did for character 2.5 bug boots. To get this on our device, we need to go to project settings, add our bundle ID. Mine's going to be the same thing. I use the same bundle ID for all the characters. It's just easier to test if you have one bundle ID and then test all your games with that one bundle ID. The only difference is if you're submitting the game on the App Store, then you need to have a separate bundle ID. Otherwise, I just keep everything under one bundle ID. So much faster, so much easier to remember. Back to file, export iOS. That's the device I use. I know I mentioned I'm going to do a Android version at some point, but I need to get a new Android device. I have a very old Android device, and I don't think it can handle the Buildbox 3 games. I definitely need to do that at some point. These are all thoughts and ideas of things I need to do, or just thoughts that I have. But now that it's being recorded, I can actually refer to certain things that I said I was going to do, because I really don't know. There's like a whole bunch of stuff that I think about, and you're not always going to execute on every idea. You have to be very specific on the ideas that you choose to pursue. Otherwise, you're just doing all of the ideas for no reason, because you're not really focusing your time on one particular idea that matches your end goal. The end goal for me is to get to the character that I really like and then build a full game out of it. If I really like that character and I really like the design or the ideas that I have for it, then I'll be much more motivated to create that game versus something that I'm less likely to be motivated about and feel a little bit iffy on whether I'm going to like this game throughout the entire process. Building a game takes time. If you're not really motivated to do it, that's going to dwindle down daily. When you're going through the process, there's going to be issues, problems, and challenges that you need to tackle. You need to be able to plow through the entire process with no issues. You need to have the maximum amount of motivation to do so, and also the discipline. That's why I'm doing all these videos, is to build up that momentum, because it helps me create all this content for all of these characters, but also you can really tell which one I'm super excited about and the ones I'm not because of the way I'm talking about it. That's why I think it's important to possibly record yourself or even just talk about your game ideas or your characters or stuff like that. You can tell how passionate you are about the subject or the character or whatever you're working on by the way you talk about it. So that's something that's super important. I like that happens with me. It doesn't feel like work to me, let's just put it that way, when I'm in that mode and I'm in my creative flow. When I'm in that flow, everything just feels fun. It's natural. I'm moving with the momentum. I don't really need to do much. Everything just comes natural. I'm not really spending a lot of energy to do what I need to do. Everything's just coming out, flowing how it should be flowing, just like how I'm talking right now. This is how content creation should be, especially with your characters, your game ideas, and your game mechanics, or whatever you're working on, animations, art, anything in life. It should feel not like work. So that's what I leave you with. That's pretty cool that I have this on video. I think it's pretty cool that this happens sometimes where I go off on a tangent. I think some of these tangents actually become important pieces for my development. I just like to have it on video for content now because that's one of my end goals, to be able to create content just strictly from whatever my thoughts are and then just chop it up and see if people resonate with it. But yeah, back to exporting character 2.5. Once we have our xCode project, go to signing and capabilities, add a value for the bundle ID. I put 2.5. That's because my character is 2.5. That's how I have separate apps on my device. Select my team, which is me, Jimmy on. Bundle display name, I put character 2.5. It shows under the app on your phone or iPad. Press play and it will say build succeeded, and then it will run to your device. Normally you can see what's happening in the debug console of xCode. It will run a bunch of these lines, and that's how you know. And I'm sending the screen recording for this character that I did in Buildbox so I can talk about it. So this is the simple screen recording that I would do for each of my characters, just so I remember what we did for this character. There was no game mechanic, but we did set up the character where we can see the dying animation, comparing the one with no outline and the one with the outline. This would be in the shadeless option, so you can't really see the low poly design of our character, but it allows us to visualize what the character would look like with a grass floor. So now with all of this, I can possibly think of a game mechanic for this character because I can see it animated and I don't have to set up anything else for this character because I already have the FBX. I know the process on what to do with the character. I've already thought about one game idea, which I mentioned, where it would be taking place in a garden of some sort. So that's actually the end of this video. That concludes the video for character 2.5. Bug Boots, the game idea, possibly now, based on what we've seen, it might take place in a garden, possibly with a bunch of trees, maybe some leaves, and then around us might be some enemies, which are just going to be big humans or big giants, where the character maybe has to watch out for stomping feet of some sort. Their character is a bug, so when you think of a bug, they're really small. They just live in their own world. The world above them would be people like us stepping on them. So that's what I think about with this character. I hope you learned a lot from this entire process, more so in the Blender process. So definitely check out that video on how I created the humanoid body for this character, which was the first time I did it with character set number 2. And what else is there? Also the introduction of using Mixamo in my workflow to see how that streamlines all the keyframe animations that we're going to be using. I use it a lot more with my current characters that I'm working on. So whenever I get to those videos, you'll be able to see that. All of this finishes character set number 2. That's a pretty big accomplishment of mine, getting through all these videos for all the characters so far. I think that's about 10 in total characters that I've been working on. I have a lot more that I want to create and to continue learning Blender and Buildbox. Yeah, so I'll see you in the next video for character set number 3. See you there. Let me know what you think in the comments if you've been learning a lot from my content. This is how I want to, I guess, put it out there. It's not really me having to think because I've already done all the work. I just need to narrate everything, which is easy for me. I definitely like talking about my process, and it helps me remember things that I learned before because it's in video form. If I need to refer back to it, I'll have the content. Also, everyone can learn from all the stuff that I did. And yeah, so let me know what you think. Please like and subscribe. See you next video. Peace.